Hi, good evening. Thanks to those of you who are joining live and those of you who are watching the recording. I appreciate you taking the time. Welcome to our workshop on holding government accountable. My name is Dr. Josh Franco, professor of political science at Cuyamaca College. Happy to have you engage in this conversation about government and holding it accountable. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So recall that this workshop is a series that's focused on how individuals inside and outside of government hold it accountable to the Constitution, federal and state laws and regulations. It's a series of 16 30-minute workshops during spring of 2020. We'll hold them every Wednesday, 7:30 to 8:30 p.m., and they're held via Zoom. Over the past few weeks, we've covered a lot of ground. So our first week was on student power. Second week was on local government. Week 3 was a semester in Sacramento or Washington, D.C. And then last week was the building, aka the California State Capitol. Today, we'll be talking about state boards and commissions. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So our learning objectives with this workshop are the following. First is to explain what state boards and commissions are. Secondly is to describe the appointments process. And third is to identify at least one state board or commission you would be interested in attending, speaking at, or serving on. So what are state boards and commissions? Well, California, like the federal government, has 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. And the executive branch consists of, among other things, state boards and commissions. Now, these state boards and commissions are legally established entities that have convening, oversight, and or regulatory power of specific policy areas, professions, and or geographic areas. Now, a question that always comes up is like, is there a list of state boards and commissions? Yes, there is. There's what's called the statutory index of positions. I'll go ahead and click that link and open that file. So here is every gubernatorial office or holder has an appointments office and an appointments secretary, and they'll oversee this entire process for all of these different boards and commissions. So for example, we have the California Board of Accountancy, or the State Building Standards Commission. We have the Delta Stewardship Council. We have the Gambling Control Commission, the California Endowment for Marine Preservation Board of Directors. We have the Physician Assistant Board. We have the University of California Governor's Selection Committee for Regents. We have the Travel and Tourism Commission. And we have things like the Wildlife Conservation Board. 6 pages worth of commissions, hundreds of them. And you might be asking, wow, that's a lot. That's really complicated. It's like too many. Well, it's a state. We have 40 million folks. We have very diverse society, economy, business sector, industrial sector, public sectors. And you need to be able to have people who will specialize in particular areas, and the boards and commissions serve that function. So let's head back to our slides here. So, there's my slide. That's fine. Here we go. So before we get more into the boards and commissions themselves, so what's the appointments process? Well, there's 3 types. There's gubernatorial, there's legislative, and there's other. So at the gubernatorial levels, like how to apply for a governor appointed position. Well, the first thing to do is to view the index of appointed positions at the governor's website on appointments. At that webpage, you'll find an index of all the governor appointed positions to review with indications of whether or not they're salaried, per diem, or non-compensated. To begin that process to apply, you want to go to the governor's appointment application page where you'll find the instructions. Let's go ahead and check out that link. So it says this page is moved. So here's the governor's web page on appointments. And it obviously says a nice thank you message for those who are considering it. And they have an online application. So let's go ahead and click on that online application so you can get a sense of what this looks like. And I'll zoom in a bit. And I'm going to go ahead and play actually this whole thing, because I think it's important that we hear it about what this process is about.
Application for appointment. Application instructions revisions. To all persons interested in applying for a position in the office of the governor, thank you for your interest in being considered for an appointment to a position in California state government. If you have submitted your application in a previous administration, or were appointed under a previous administration and wish to reapply, you must fill out the current application. We do not have access to applications from previous administrations. For individuals interested in interning with the governor's office, please fill out the application accordingly. Please indicate that you are applying for an internship in the position sought field. Please fill out all required fields. Required fields are marked with an asterisk. You must click the submit button at the bottom of the application when you are finished. The application will not go into our system if you do not click submit. We require that you print, sign and mail or fax in the authorization form at the end of the application. Do not send in the entire application, only the signed authorization page is required. We also ask that you include a copy of your current resume along with the authorization page. We advise you keep a copy of all documents for your records. If you are unable to complete your application during your session, you have the option to save your work and return later to finish. To save your partial application, click the Register/Login button at the top of your screen or the Save button at the bottom. You will be prompted to create or enter a login ID, your email address, and set a password. Your partial application will be saved at that time. Your driver's license and social security numbers are not saved, so this information will have to be re-entered when you return to login and complete your application.
So there you have the general instructions for the application process. Let me go and click on the begin application just so you get a sense of what it looks like. So here they're asking, your prefix, so the prior title, your contact information, date of birth, stuff like that. What position you're seeking. And obviously there's a lot of them. It's not like, oh, I just kind of want to do something. It's like, no, you should have a clear sense of which role you'd want to be in. And then from there, you have to share your spouse's information if you have one, current residence, like all this contact information, largely because there'll either be a background checks conducted or there'll be further follow-up with you and these contacts to, get a sense of who you are, what your interest is in serving in a role, and any other particular information. Here, they'll have some background on your education, your work history, any license or certifications, organizations, or memberships in kind of professional associations or societies, your background. So basically a lot of information about you because they want to know, can you serve in this position? One, two, is there anything about you that they should know? And then three, would that affect your ability to serve in that role? Obviously, this is what we call a political appointment because the governor appoints you. And the governor, being an elected official, wants to have everything on the up and up. So that's for the gubernatorial appointments process. Now, there's also legislative appointments. So, for example, how to apply for a speaker appointed position. When they say speaker, they're talking Speaker of the Assembly. And you can go to the speaker's appointment page here. You would submit an application by looking at the boards and commissions. And there's also seminars that the speaker's appointment office holds to learn more about the opportunities that are available for serving in on a board or commission. So in this case, the page has been updated. So let's go back to there. So here's the background information about being appointed by the speaker. And then we also have, if you want to be appointed by the Senate President Pro Tem, you'd want to, in this case, contact the Senate Appointments Office for more information. So there's gubernatorial or executive branch appointments, or the appointment is by the executive, in this case, the governor. There's also legislative appointments. So the appointments by the Speaker of the Assembly or the Senate President Pro Tem on these various boards and commissions. Now, other types of appointments include being appointed through kind of for some particular role or position. So the example I have here is a student regent on the UC Board of Regents. And the reason I share this because I'm familiar with this process. I went through it when I was an undergraduate student at UC Merced, making it to this last round on the regents level. But you have like a campus-based application process, and then you'll have regents analyzing and scrutinizing your application, and you'll be interviewed by them, by other students. And then if you make it past that round, you'll go to the full board of what's called UCSA, the University of California Student Association, which is the statewide entity that represents all University of California students. And if you make it past that round of 10, then you'll be one of 3 candidates that the Regents Committee will review. You also have student trustee on the CSU Board of Trustees. You also have student governor on this community college Board of Governors. So there's just some of these kind of appointment roles that are available for students who are thinking about wanting to serve their peers at the state level and state boards and commissions. Now, one question that generally comes is like, how many appointed positions are there? Well, as of September of 2020, there are about 1,200 of them. And let's go ahead and click on this link. So this was a list of all the appointed positions that I collected about 2 years ago, a little under 2 years ago. And this is just like a general count. You see all these different roles. All right, plenty of places to be involved and engage. One I like to point out is the Youth Poet Laureate, which is pretty cool. That's the person who serves as like a person who will promote poetry and literature across the state for a year, or I'm not sure. I don't remember how long the term is, but for some period of time. So a lot. Now, for you as a student, or maybe like you came across this YouTube video and you're not a student, like, how do I do this? Another big question is like, how do you choose a board of commission to like be involved with? Well, the question is like, to attend, to start to learn about things. So, 5 questions you want to ask yourself are: first, what are you interested in? Say, for example, you're interested in occupational therapy because that's the field that you're training in, that you're going to go into. Well, there is a board that covers that field. Say you want to be a doctor. Well, there's a medical board that covers that field. Say you're interested in the environment. Well, there's different regional boards that address the wildlife at either or at a regional level. There's also kind of statewide environmental boards. Second question to ask yourself was, what's your declared major? Right. So if you're majoring in political science, almost any board or commission would be pretty interesting to you, just because you're probably wanting to learn about how government works. But let's say that you're interested in natural resources and particularly water. Well, there's a statewide State Water Resources Control Board, and then there's regional quality control boards. And that might be something you want to spend some time learning about, engaging with. Next question is, what's your intended career? Now, this might be a little harder for those of us who are like right out of college or right out of high school going into college. For those of us who are returning to college after some period of time, you might have a clear sense of what you'd want to do. In any case, given the different ranges and focus, when I ask you like, what's your intended career, like just something that you're kind of particularly interested in. So if you have a vague idea that you want to be a lawyer, that's kind of good enough. Or if you have this clear idea that you want to be a biochemist, then obviously that helps too. The idea is that your career should help shape kind of a board or commission that you'd want to engage with. Fourth, big question is like, what are you concerned or worried about? Now, you might say, I'm not worried about anything. Well, then maybe a board and commission is where you want to spend your time. But say you're really worried about things like traffic. Well, we have the California Transportation Commission, which decides how state funding for infrastructure is allocated. And that might be a place you want to show up and spend some time learning about, engaging with, and being a part of that community because you're worried about traffic. Others of you might be worried about the coast, the oceans, the beach, the water. Well, in that case, you might want to attend the California Coastal Commission because they get to decide what happens on California's coastline. Now, this last question is, what do you want to develop an expertise in? And this is different than career. I think obviously most of the times we might think that the career that you have is where you will develop your expertise, but you can also see them as two separate things. So say you really want to be an expert in, let's say, arts and humanities, even though you're, let's say, a biologist, right? You still care deeply about the arts and humanities. Well, we have boards and commissions that cover those things, either at a regional level or again, or at a state level. So what you want to develop expertise in is like what you're passionate about, what you care about. It might be connected directly to career, or it might not be. Just depends on what your interests are. So with those questions in mind, another big question that can be asked is like, how can I speak at a board or commission? Well, in order to do that, you want to attend one of their board meetings. Most of the times they're held in Sacramento or at a county building or regional office. During COVID, at least the height of it, there was online meetings, so you can like Zoom right in and be a listener and participant. I think that might be changing over the next 6 to 18 months, but hopefully some of these boards and commissions have found the utility in having Zoom meetings and having the public be able to engage. So in order to speak at a board or commission, one, you just have to be able to answer the following, like, what are you concerned or worried about? Like, if you're going to talk to a board or commission that has expertise in a field, like, you'd want to be able to tell them what you're thinking about it, or what you're worried about, or what you're concerned about. Another question is, what do you want to develop an expertise in? Again, you go to these board meetings with the intention of learning more, engaging, sharing your thoughts or concerns, but it's also because you want to build your skill set, build your knowledge base in the field. Another big question is, like, what are you being affected by? So if you're being affected by traffic or wildlife or water or electricity costs or things of that nature, obviously it's a place where you want to share your concerns with the specific board or commission. And then what's the concern in your community? So because you're engaged, because you're involved, because you're talking with others, you're learning about what's going on. You might hear like, well, this is a problem, that's a problem, this is an issue, that's an issue. So you want to be able to elevate it and raise it. So let's go ahead and walk through an example of this. I'm going to pull up the this one that's kind of just hanging out right here. We'll call it the Wildlife Conservation Board. So we'll go ahead and Google that. So let's check out their website. And we'll go to their About page. And let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit and have this read to us. Let me change the voice option. Okay.
The Wildlife Conservation Board, WCB, was created by legislation in 1947 to administer a capital outlay program for wildlife conservation and related public recreation. Originally created within the California Department of Natural Resources, and later placed with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, WCB is a separate and independent board with authority and funding to carry out an acquisition and development program for wildlife conservation, California Fish and Game Code 1300 ETSEQ. WCB's 7-member board consists of the President of the Fish and Game Commission, the Director of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Director of the Department of Finance, and 4 public members, 2 appointed by the legislature and 2 by the governor. Legislation that created WCB also established a Legislative Advisory Committee consisting of 3 members of the Senate and 3 members of the Assembly, which meet with WCB, providing legislative oversight. The primary responsibilities of WCB are to select, authorize, and allocate funds for the purchase of land and waters suitable for recreation purposes and the preservation, protection, and restoration of wildlife habitat. WCB approves and funds projects that set aside lands within the state for such purposes, through acquisition or other means, to meet these objectives. WCB can also authorize the construction of facilities for recreational purposes on property in which it has a proprietary interest. WCB's 3 main functions are land acquisition, habitat restoration, and development of wildlife-oriented public access facilities, which are carried out through its programs. Resources.
So there you get a sense of what the Wildlife Conservation Board does. You might be asking, okay, well, how do I go to, say you're worried about, let's say a rare species of bird, and maybe this Wildlife Conservation Board can do something about it or has done something about it. So here we can see that their board meeting scheduled. They'll have one, they just had one on Thursday, February 24th. The next one's May 26th, and then August 25th, and then November 17th. So let's go ahead and take a look at the meeting presentations that were provided at this last meeting just a week ago. So click on the link. It might take a few moments for it to load because it's probably images and graphs and maps. But we'll find out in a moment once it does load. Still loading. Please wait. And here we can also find the minutes from prior board meetings. So let's go ahead and check out the full agenda from the November 2021 meeting. There we go. So here's a Wildlife Conservation Board meeting for February 24th, 10 a.m. Their discussion, their item 2, discussion, selection of a new board chair. Item 3, public forum. So the public forum is where you would asked to speak, and then you would share your questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, suggestions, or complaints. Item 4 was funding status on different projects. In this case, there's a geographic information system or GIS map that shows the board's proposed projects as of that date. And looks at this point, they have 27 different projects. And if we take a little closer look, we'll see that there's a few in San Diego County. Looks like 3 of them, 2 stars and 1 diamond. And the stars are equal public access, and the diamond is a conservation easement. That's pretty interesting. So zoom out here. And then consent items. Consent items are things that are grouped together and they can be voted on all at once by the board. Members of the board can pull items from the consent agenda and then ask to have specific discussions on them, to ask questions or to raise concerns or to vote on them separately because they might have a differing opinion than what's being recommended by the staff. So here's how they're proposing recovery funds, and then motions, and then their calendar items. So this is just a lot of background information, and you can see it's obviously visual heavy because when you're talking about wildlife conservation and locations, it's nice to have some sense of what they are and some pictures to engage with it. So this is just one of the hundreds of boards and commissions that exist in the state of California that you can be engaged and involved with. And my hope is that as you think about, how you want to participate in our political system and hold it accountable, that you can go to these boards and commissions as a member of the public. You can share with them your thoughts and concerns. And at the very least, they'll thank you for your comments. And at the most, they might reach out to you directly or ask to get more information based on what you're sharing. And that's just your way of staying involved and engaged in what's going on. So in other words, boards and commissions are not something to shy away from or to be afraid of. Know that they're there as public spaces for the public to be engaged with, and for individuals like you and me to raise our questions, thoughts, and comments to the policymakers, to the regulators, to the decision makers, to the funders, who always would appreciate hearing from the broader public that they seek to represent. So with that, we'll go ahead and move to our discussion. Thanks for your time and attention, and have a great night.